Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this brief social studies presentation. Before we get started, just a couple good note-taking tips. First, make sure that you're only writing down the most important information. Second, if you need to stop or rewind the video, feel free to do that at any time to get what you missed. Let's get started. Our topic for today is, should the United States have dropped the atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II? To begin, I want to start us off with two quotes. The first quote says, "The atom bomb was no great decision. It was merely another powerful weapon in the arsenal of righteousness." And this was stated by Harry Truman, our president during the end of World War II. He's basically saying here that the bombs were just a normal weapon that was needed in order to win the war. However, Truman also said, "We have discovered the most terrible bomb in the history of the world. It may be the fire destruction prophesied in the Euphrates Valley era after Noah and his fabulous ark." This says that the bomb itself is really destructive in nature and is one of the most devastating inventions of human history. These two quotes by the same person, Harry Truman, shows that this is really a topic that has two sides to it, whether or not the bomb should have been dropped. But before we can learn about that, we need a little background on why the bombs were dropped in the first place. During the 1920s and 1930s, Japan and America were allies, meaning that they were friends. The U.S. helped Japan develop. It was very influential on the culture of Japan. It helped modernize the military of Japan, and the economy of Japan was bolstered by America. On this image, you could even see how American culture really permeated Japanese life. One of the reasons why the Japanese are so great at baseball today is because the United States brought baseball to Japan during this time period. So it's important to know that the U.S. and Japan were friends during the 1920s and 30s. However, that all changed in September of 1931. The Japanese army invaded Manchuria, which you could see on the map on the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Manchuria is the northern section of China, just north of Korea and northeast of China. It's that orange shaded area there. Japan invaded that section of China for a couple of reasons. First, Manchuria had lots of natural resources that Japan could use to build its military. Secondly, Manchuria offered a buffer or protection for Japan against the USSR, the Soviet Union, Russia. So invading Manchuria helped protect Japan against Russia. You can see how it's this section in between Japan and Russia there on the screen. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if China weren't friends with America as well. Imagine two of your friends getting into a fight and how awkward that is for you being in the middle. This is sort of the position that America is put into in September of 1931. Japan invades America's ally, China, and all of a sudden, America really doesn't like that all that much. Throughout the 1930s, Japan continued to build its military. And as a result, it started expanding throughout the Pacific Ocean, getting closer and closer to the United States through taking over several of the islands in the Pacific, the Philippines, all those little small patches of islands. The U.S. didn't like this. The U.S. didn't like that Japan was expanding its military throughout the 1930s. So what the United States did was restrict trade with Japan, meaning they pretty much stopped all trade with Japan. And one of the things that they stopped trading was oil, gasoline, however you want to put it. Oil and gas, those are really, really important for Japan at this time because Japan didn't have oil really on its island at all. It's a small country and doesn't have a lot of oil. And if you're Japan and you're trying to build your military up, you need oil to run it. Cars, planes, trucks, tanks, all of these things need oil to run. So because the U.S. stopped trading oil with Japan, Japan really wasn't thrilled about this. In 1941, Japan retaliated, meaning they went back against America. And they did this by attacking the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Basically, what the Japanese did was send planes in a sneak attack to Hawaii to attack the United States Navy, hoping that it would knock the U.S. out of the impending World War II. The next day, Franklin Roosevelt, our president at the time, went live in front of America and said, "This is a day that will live in infamy," meaning it's a bad day for America. The next day, America declared war, starting or bringing the United States into World War II. Japan had joined the Germans and Italians, and they were known as the Axis powers. They're sort of the bad guys in this war. So the U.S. is thrust into World War II in 1941 because Japan attacked the Navy base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Throughout the early 1940s, from 1942 to 1945, the United States and Japan fought in the Pacific Ocean, and it really was a bloody war. The U.S. had a strategy called island hopping. If you look at the image there on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see the U.S. strategy going from one tiny island to another, getting closer and closer to the Japanese mainland. This was made difficult, though, with the Japanese mindset of fighting to the death. The Japanese found it very dishonorable to surrender in battle. They would rather fight to the death than surrender, and this was really ingrained in their culture, going all the way back to Bushido and the Code of the Samurai. So America is forced to fight for little tiny pieces of land throughout the 1940s, getting closer and closer to Japan, winning and losing battles along the way. During this time, several countries were developing their own nuclear programs. In the 1930s, the Nazis were experimenting with nuclear fission. Fission simply means to cut apart, and in this case, nuclear fission is the ability to cut atoms in two pieces. The Germans found that nuclear fission releases a lot of energy, and as a result of this, they realized that the power of the atom could be something that could be used in warfare. Luckily for us, the Nazis never were able to develop a nuclear weapon. At about the same time the United States was experimenting with atomic bombs or atomic weapons, the Japanese were also doing the same thing. They were trying to create a nuclear bomb as well, one that you can divide an atom and release a massive amount of energy. Just like the Nazis, we're very lucky the Japanese did not develop a nuclear weapon during World War II. So just to recap, in the 1920s and 30s, America were allies with Japan. However, Japan invaded Manchuria, the northern section of China, for resources and to protect themselves against the Soviet Union, Russia. The U.S. went back against Japan and prevented oil from being traded with them. Japan got angry and attacked the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. And it led to the beginnings of World War II, America and Japan fighting in the Pacific Ocean, and the U.S. getting closer and closer to the Japanese mainland. My next presentation, we're going to talk about the conclusion of that war and what its impact was on the world. Thanks for watching.